Hello Raptors fans, and welcome back to Raptors Report. Today we are going to be examining the Toronto Raptors game against the Portland Trailblazers. But before we do that, we've got some more NBA draft to talk. And as you can see, we are in Google Sheets, and we are going to be taking a look at a couple of things today. The first of which is the outcomes for the Toronto Raptors in the draft lottery. We'll be examining that. And then we're going to be going into some of the draft tiers. So I've put together some pretty interesting stuff regarding this year's draft. Near the top 15 picks, I have assembled and created a draft tier list based on expert analysis, and I will be going through that and giving you my thoughts. But first of all, if you haven't already, check the description. I've done draft evaluations, scouting reports on almost all of the top 15 draft prospects this year, all of the guys that the Raptors could potentially draft this year. So go take a look at that if you haven't already. Just hit the More button underneath the title in the description, and you can take a look at those. But first off, we are going to be discussing what is happening with the Toronto Raptors draft lottery odds. Because if you don't know, the Toronto Raptors are getting closer and closer to being locked in where they sit currently and where it looks like the Toronto Raptors are going to be ending up. Which is 7th in this year's draft in terms of the lottery odds. So there's only really two teams that the Toronto Raptors could either catch in the reverse standings or could pass them. And that is the San Antonio Spurs and the Brooklyn Nets. As you can see, there are 6 games remaining for the Toronto Raptors and approximately that for the other teams as well. But as you can see, there's some distance between both of the teams. So there's 3 games between Toronto and Brooklyn, and then there's 4.5 games between them and San Antonio. So it's looking more and more like the Toronto Raptors are going to be locked into that 7th overall draft odd range. And as you can see, I've highlighted that here. These are all of the different outcomes that could happen to the Toronto Raptors if they get the 7th best odds. So as you can see, they would have a 7.5% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick, 7.8 for second, 8.14 for third, and about 8.5 for fourth. Add that all up, and they are around 32% overall to move into the top 4 of this year's draft. So just under a third of the time they will be moving into the top 4. Just over a third of the time they will be picking 8th. So in terms of the likelihood of where they're going to be picking, the plurality of the lottery balls indicate that the Toronto Raptors will be picking 8th. 34% is higher than any other individual percentage, and it's higher slightly than them moving into the top 4. Then underneath that, the next most likely outcome is that they pick where they currently sit at 7th, just under 20%, then 9th. That would probably be worst possible likely outcome. So if 2 teams leapfrog them into the top 4, so 2 teams behind them in the reverse standings pass them and go into the top 4, the Raptors will move down to 9th. So it's still possible, just under 13%. And then the mega nightmare scenario, 1.3% chance that they would end up picking 10th. And yeah, 11th is possible, but unlikely. So this is kind of what we're looking at right now. Prepare yourself for the 2 most likely outcomes, 8th, and then top 4, and then 7th, and then the others, so 9th and 10th. And I just wanted to show you guys this because it is kind of confusing where the Toronto Raptors are likely to pick if they are in a different draft range. Of course, if they move up and catch the Brooklyn Nets and move past them in the reverse standings and they go up to 6th, I don't think it's very likely, but they would have around a 37% chance, so just over a third chance to move into the top 4, which would be very nice. And if they were to move to 8th, they would be under 30% to move into the top 4. In any case, what we're going to do now is kind of interesting. It's something that I've been working on, and it is a consensus tier list. And so what I've done is I have taken the 4 draft boards that we looked at in the past episode, Tankathon, ESPN, Bleacher Report, and Yahoo. Those are the major websites, the major publications that have a big board. So top 100 prospect and or an up-to-date mock draft. And so Tankathon, ESPN, and Yahoo are all big boards. The Bleacher Report article that I referenced, they don't really have a big board that's up to date. What they have right now is a mock draft, and so I use that. But as you can see, all of them have a number of players ranked 1 to 15. And what I have done is that I have taken the average of all of the players on the lists and their average draft pick, where they are picked at, the average of all 4 of these. So as you can see, we're going to move over here and take a look at this, this list here. And this is what I have compiled. So what I've done is that, as you can see here, these are the average draft picks right here. And Cooper Flag is number 1 with a bullet. No mock draft or top 100 board has him ranked anywhere but number 1, so his average draft pick is 1. Same with Dylan Harper. Dylan Harper is number 2 with a bullet. There's no variation on any of the lists. He is number 2. Then the third draft here arrives, where Ace Bailey and VJ Edgecombe are, and the reason I have them in the tier 3 range here is because Bleacher Report had VJ Edgecombe rated above Ace Bailey, and as a result there's a little bit of fluctuation there, and as a result you can see that their average draft pick range is a little different, and that makes up tier 3. And then in tier 4 is a very large section here, and the highest ranked player, so the one with the highest draft pick range, is Common Malawatch. He has an average pick number of 6.75, which is the highest in this draft range, followed by Derek Queen, then Trey Johnson, then Jeremiah Fears, then Con Knipple, and then Kasparas Yakachonis. But as you can see, they're all pretty tightly intertwined here. There's not a lot of daylight between where Common Malawatch is ranked and Kasparas Yakachonis. So this is just, there are 2 draft picks between the 2 of these players. So 6.75 and 8.75, there's only a gap of 2 draft picks. So this is a very big cluster, and that's basically the 4th tier. After that, there's a sizable gap here, and you get into Jace Richardson and Colin Murray Boyles. Those 2 are in tier 5. And then you can see there's another large gap, and the tier 6 players, Noah Senge, Igor Demon, and Asa Newell. So this is kind of where the draft is right now. And this is what I would say the consensus tier list. This is what I am seeing from the major publications that are covering the draft right now. And I have to say that it looks pretty good. I don't see a lot of, red herrings or things that look too out of place, although there are people that I disagree with. And I also rank them in terms of their BPM, which is box score plus minus. And box score plus minus is simply taking all of the box score stats, kind of boiling them all down into something that resembles like a 1-number stat. And it's not completely predictive. There are a number of players that didn't do very well in this stat that went on to become, big time players. Like Anthony Edwards had a pretty unexciting BPM. Scotty Barnes didn't have a great one. It was okay, but it wasn't amazing. There were a bunch of guys that didn't really impress in that, but as a rule, generally the better players in the draft have pretty good BPM. So I wanted to put that down as well. I also listed their class, which is pretty crazy. This draft class is a lot different than other ones because within the top 10, ranked by professional scouts, all of them are freshmen, all of them. The first player that is not a freshman that is ranked in the top 15 is Colin Murray Boyles, who's a sophomore, so he's not even that old, and he's ranked 12th. So this is a pretty interesting draft class in terms of just, how much upside there is. And I think that freshmen, obviously, the younger a player is, the more upside generally they have. There's more runway there. They haven't really filled out all of their skills. So I would say that this draft class, just in general, is very high upside. I think there are a lot of players here who could improve and get way better and become star players. We're not going to talk too much about the top 2 tiers, so Cooper Flag, Dylan Harper, not much to discuss there. Those 2 guys, I've scouted them and talked about them, and they're pretty solidified in those 2 tiers. The only thing I would say about the second tier is that I might put VJ Edgecombe there. I think he is a really exciting player. As you can see, he's extremely productive in terms of BPM, and he plays both ends of the court, is extremely athletic, has a really high upside. I might put him in tier 2. I don't have him ranked above Dylan Harper, but I think there's a conversation there. I'm also not as high on Ace Bailey. There are some holes in his game. He has obviously incredible upside as a scorer, as a shooter, and as sort of a scoring option at the forward spot, sort of a 3-level scorer. So I understand why he's ranked highly, although I don't know if I would put him as high in this year's draft. In terms of other players that I think are a little overvalued here, Derek Queen, I've given you my thoughts there. He might be in tier 4, although I might put him a little lower on the list. Kasparas Yakachonis, I might put him a little lower. And then there are the two guys who are ranked in tier 5. I actually like those players quite a bit. So Jace Richardson and Colin Murray-Boyles, those two players I'm pretty high on. I think that Jace Richardson as a freshman, just an extremely productive player. He can shoot, he can guard, he can make plays. The only thing about him is that he is kind of a little undersized. But other than that, he's really got the goods. I really like him. And Colin Murray-Boyles, I think there's some people who are concerned about his fit, which is why people have moved him down the draft boards. But if the Toronto Raptors are looking for a big man and Kamen Malawach is off the board, I think Colin Murray-Boyles, especially if the Toronto Raptors get bumped down, into the 8th, 9th range there, and they don't like the guard options, I think Colin Murray-Boyles could be a really good pickup there. In terms of the other players, I mean, the tier 6 guys, I wouldn't be interested in most of these players. The guy I like there, I guess I like both Asenge and Demon, but they are more question marks at this point. They have some, intriguing upside. Asenge, I think, has a role in the NBA, but he needs to, grow and get better. And Igor Demon has some scoring question marks. He's not very efficient right now, and he would need to get better in that area. But I do like both of those players. Maybe not with the Toronto Raptors draft pick. And as you can see, I've gone through all of their projected roles. Cooper Flagg, superstar two-way forward. Dylan Harper, star lead guard. Ace Bailey, high upside stretch 4. I've gone through all of the different players and what their roles are going to be at the next level. I'm kind of interested what you guys think about this draft tier list and whether you think that there's like a booby prize in this year's draft. And so I think that in terms of, guys that could break out and guys that could bust, I would be very concerned about Ace Bailey. I think that while he has a lot of upside, he has a lot of potential downside as a player. I think that he has potential to bust. Derek Queen, I think it's tough for teams to build defenses around centers that maybe are not very good defensively. And Kasparas Yakachonis has moved down in terms of where scouts have ranked him. He was top 5 most of the year, and now, as you can see, he has dropped all the way down to 10th in terms of his rank. He's in tier 4, where I think he was the whole time, but he has moved significantly further down in that tier. He's at the bottom of that tier now. I still think he might be a little overvalued there. In terms of the guys that I think are undervalued, I think the guys in tier 5. I like both of them. I could see either of those players being steals. If they were to go 11th and 12th, I think they could be like really good players for the team that drafts them. In any case, I wanted to show you guys this. This is kind of what I've been working on. But yeah, we will talk about the Toronto Raptors game. So the Toronto Raptors played last night, so why don't we jump over there and we'll discuss that further. Okay, so let's talk about the Toronto Raptors against the Portland Trailblazers. Not a great game. The first half was pretty exciting, but the second half wasn't very good, and there were some pretty disappointing performances from the veteran players, so we'll get into that. But why don't we start off the player evaluations with Jamal Shead. I think Jamal Shead had a good game. 10 points on 4 of 8 shooting in 25 minutes, which is good. 2 of 3 from 3, so his shot has come back around. He's very hot and cold. But it's nice to see him have a productive evening from the three-point line. He also had 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and 2 turnovers, and he forced another 8-second violation. And one of the most important things this game, and why I think he was the best player for the Toronto Raptors, was the tremendous ball pressure that he and Jacoby Walter were able to provide. And how disruptive it was against the Portland Trailblazers, especially against Delano Banton. Delano Banton does not have the tightest handle. He had a decent game, especially from a scoring perspective, but he did turn the ball over 6 times, and many of those turnovers were just generated by Jamal Shed, just getting into him and really harassing him when he was trying to handle the ball and bring the ball up. That is a big thing, is that if Jamal Shed thinks that maybe you're not a very good ball handler, he is going to be on top of you and just relentlessly harassing your dribble. He was able to create a lot of deflections and steals and turnovers. He just did a fantastic job. He was credited with 2 steals, but he was responsible for a ton of turnovers. Denny Avdia also turned the ball over 7 times, but that was maybe more Jacoby Walter. But yeah, he was a big reason why the game was pretty close. And although he didn't have a ton of assists, I think his playmaking is still very positive. But really, the defensive end and the efficiency of his scoring were enough for me to give him, the top billing here. Next up, we'll go to Orlando Robinson, who I think had a really good game. He had 14 points on 6 of 12 shooting, which is nice. 2 of 3 from the 3-point line, which is impressive. He has really come along in that area. In fact, he is up to 37% from 3 on the season, which is really impressive. That is right in that range of respectability. In fact, it's pretty good. And from a center, that is not a very common skill. So that's something to consider when evaluating him. And it feels like I've been up and down on this guy because, he started off really well, and then he kind of hit the skids, and the layups are an issue. But then, he started playing better, and now he's hitting 3-point shots. And it's just like, he has sort of an odd collection of skills, but I would say now I'm starting to come back around on him. Gosh, it's hard to peg, but I was impressed with him last night. 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 0 blocks, 0 turnovers, and pretty good defense. He had a bunch of really nice screens, one screen in particular, which just completely freed RJ for an uncontested layup. Thought he had a good game. Next up, we will go to Jacoby Walter, and this is going to be, a little controversial because his scoring wasn't great last night. He only had 9 points on 3 of 9 shooting, and 1 of 4 from 3 with 2 of 2 from the free throw line. But he did have 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, and 1 turnover. But really, this was about the defense. He was so disruptive on defense. He was so aggressive on defense. That is one thing I love, is that he and Jamal Shed are going out there and just competing. Those guys battle on defense. Those guys go in there with a purpose to try and shut you down and try and create turnovers. He was responsible for far more turnovers than he was credited for in terms of steals. So I just want to give a shout out there. He does need to tighten up his handle, and it wasn't as good of a shooting night from 3. He was only 1 of 4 from 3 compared to the last game where he was 5 of 5. So not an incredible night shooting the ball, but I think he did a good job. Next up, we'll go to RJ Barrett, who was the leading scorer in this game. So it's kind of a little odd that he's a little bit further down. I just think that other players had better nights than him, and he wasn't particularly efficient. So he had 18 points on 18 shots, but it was 9 of 18 from the field, so it was, a 50% shooting night. The only unfortunate part is that, he was 0 of 5 from 3, so he wasn't able to make any threes, and he was 0 of 1 from the line. So the efficiency was not great. He had 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, 1 block, and 1 turnover. The defense was pretty good. I think that there were a couple of possessions where he was on ball, and he did a good job staying in front of his man. He did a good job of contesting shots. The off-ball defense still needs work, and it wasn't a very efficient night from him, but I think that he had a positive night. I think there were a couple of positive performances in this game. And then we're going to get to the last player on this list here, and that is Scotty Barnes. And I think it's time to shut down Scotty Barnes, because he has noted, he and Darko have said that he is playing injured. He's playing with an injured hand, which has, prevented him from shooting the ball very well or making, shots that he usually makes around the rim. He hasn't been very efficient at all. He only had 5 points and 2 of 8 shooting. He was 0 of 2 from 3, 1 of 1 from the free throw line. Only 2 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, 2 turnovers. couple of those turnovers were ugly too. They weren't very good looking. Just a pretty poor game from him. And I need to see more from him next season, because it's a pretty dismal end to the season. He's had a couple of stinkers in a row, and I'm sure that has something to do with an injury, but, you know, maybe it's time for him to, you know, get some R&R and come back next season better. Off the bench, I think there were a couple of really strong performances. Ochai Agbaji, he had a really good game on both ends. He had 15 points on 6 of 11 shooting. He was 3 of 5 from 3. He hit a bunch of nice looking shots. His shot is very good looking, and he was able to be efficient from there. He's been one of the Raptors' best shooters this season, and he picked up where he left off this game. Had 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals, 0 blocks, 0 turnovers. Thought it was a very positive game from him. I think that, you know, he did a really good job on defense and then made his shots. So that's what he's in the game for. After that, AJ Lawson had a really fun game. Again, I think his defense was pretty exciting too. He got a bunch of steals. He had 13 points on 6 of 8 shooting. He was 1 of 2 from 3. I think a couple of the shots that he made were like foot on the line, 2-point shots. So pretty close to a 3. And he has no fear. He will shoot a shot if you give him the opportunity, no matter how guarded he is. He had 3 rebounds, 4 assists, which is impressive, 2 steals, 0 blocks, and 3 turnovers. Thought it was a very fun game from him. Next up, we'll go to Jonathan Mogbo. He had 10 points on 10 shots, so not great. He had 3 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, but 6 turnovers, and that's obviously not what you want to see. They're letting him handle the ball a lot more in the second unit. They don't really have a traditional point guard in that unit, so they have been giving him a lot of reps with the ball in his hands, and unfortunately right now his handle isn't where it needs to be in order to be, you know, a point forward, but he does have good playmaking vision and he is able to make plays for other people, but unfortunately he can get a little sloppy with the ball sometimes. But I thought it was an okay game, especially from the defensive perspective. I think he does a lot of good things on that end. And last but not least, Jamison Battle had 9 points on 3 of 4 shooting. All of them were 3s, so 3 of 4 from 3. 4 rebounds, 1 assist, 0 steals, 0 blocks, 2 turnovers. Thought a pretty good game from him. It just seemed like, you know, he was just stroking it. I thought he had a better game, honestly, looking at this score sheet here. I thought he hit a couple more 3s because it seemed like he was on fire, but a good efficient night from him in only 24 minutes. And yeah, that's pretty much everybody who played in this game. And it wasn't really a competitive game in the second half. The Portland Trailblazers have a bunch of really exciting, good players, not the least of which was Shaedon Sharpe, Canadian, 36 points on 23 shots. He was stroking it from range, 4 of 10 from 3. He had 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, only 1 turnover. He was fantastic. He was really exciting. Denny Avdia had a good game, even though he did turn the ball over 7 times, so maybe not an amazing game. And Delano Banton, sort of a revenge game, but not really. 23 points on 19 shots isn't anything to write home about. 6 turnovers. But yeah, that was the game. Nothing really too exciting here. The Raptors tank continues to roll on. Maybe the notable thing is that Scotty Barnes is just starting to pile up bad game after bad game, so maybe it's time for him, you know, to take a vacation. Toronto Raptors play the Detroit Pistons tonight at 7:30 in Toronto, and I think the Pistons will be able to win that game. They're just a good team, just a stereotypically good team. It'll be interesting to see where the Toronto Raptors land in the draft lottery when all things are said and done. And in any case, that is today's video. That is the episode. Let me know what you think of the draft tier list. Do you agree with it, or do you agree with my analysis? Where do you rank players? Do you think that some players are still a little too overrated, a little too underrated? Let me know here in the comments, and also on Twitter and Blue Sky, where you can reach me at Raps Report. I love talking to Toronto Raptors fans. We are the best. And if you haven't, please leave a like and then subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel grow, lets the algorithm know to recommend this content to other Raptors fans like you. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.